All right. Ready?
I hope so.
We'll begin this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. This is July the 1st, 2024. Rather than having it's a work session / budget hearing, this morning we're going to be working through, and today we're going to be working through the budgets for the remainder of the county's departments. We started on last Thursday. Last Thursday we covered 65% of the budget in just a few departments. Today we're going to cover 65 departments with 35% of the budget. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer, to start us off.
We call ourselves small but mighty.
Yes.
Okay. So today, Monday, July 1st, we will get started on the admin services group. And just a reminder, this is the department's requests for their budget. This is not our preliminary budget. This is just a notification and giving information to the commissioners on what the budget requests are and then our capital improvement projects. So, Angela, if you want to get us started.
And before we get started, I might note that there's just a little change. After Human Resources, we're going to be doing the County Counselor's Office. Our County Counselor, Mr. Ecker, is out ill today. Tabitha is going to be taking over, so to kind of help her out, we're going to let her go second. So, all right, Angela?
Good morning, Angela Lewis, Director of Administrative Services, and I'll be presenting Human Resources budget. Our budget request for this year is $798,813. 83% of that is salaries and 17% is supplies, services, and leases. We have two budget requests this year that will take us over a flat budget. The first is that we're asking for $3,500 for the employee awards and recognition. As you're aware, we brought back the employee significant anniversary and retiree ceremony this year. It's well received, but awards are a lot more than we anticipated in cost. So we need to add to the budget for that. The second request is for a wage study. Our last wage study was conducted in 2021 and implemented in 2022. It's important that we're able to attract and retain talent, and a wage study would help us do that. I recognize fully that a $100,000 addition to a budget is a big ask. So if you're not able to grant it in the budget, I'd ask you to consider using any leftover contingency at the end of 2024 to try to help fund that. In closing, as the Human Resources Director, I'd just like to advocate for a moment for community corrections, the health department, and public works. Even if we didn't do a wage study, all three of those departments have some positions that we would need to look at to be able to retain talent. I know Brian requested budget for community corrections. I know Teresa will tell you how difficult it is to fill nursing positions. And Kurt has had some recent success with the road and bridge maintenance, but he could use a little help there too. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Angela, for those that are watching or present, why is the $100,000 for the wage study important to Shawnee County?
We need to be able to keep the people we have and pay them well, and we need to be able to attract people into the positions. At community corrections, the health department, and public works, it's hard for us to fill a lot of those positions. I'll just give you a personal example. My daughter is a phlebotomist. She's making what we're paying our nurses. So we've got to do better in some of these positions if we want to bring people into them.
Other questions for Angela? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Tabitha?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tabitha Push, Shawnee County Counselor's Office. I'm not going to go over all of the duties of our office, but we are the civil attorneys and legal counsel for Shawnee County, Kansas. There's 4 attorneys in our office. Rich Eckert, who the second time around has been here since November of 2023. Jonathan Brazon, who's been here since 2001. Ashley Beeger's been here since 2011. And Kyle Edelman is our newest attorney. He's been here since March of 2023. So we do have a lot of years of experience in our office. We have 2 administrative staff, myself, which have been here since 2018, and Cheyenne Meyer, who's been here since March of 2021. Okay, our overall budget comparison this year, we did slightly increase a 6.16%, and I'll go over that in more detail on the next slides. Our tax sale fund, our overall requested increase was a 7.51% increase. Most of those increases come in our personnel services, so our employee step increases and benefits. And then we did have a large increase in our retirement fund this year. And that is calculated by Audit Finance Department, so we can keep the right amount in our fund. Contractual services, we actually did decrease slightly this year. We tried to make sure we got rid of some things that we haven't been using, and then there was just slight increases in some of our membership dues and subscriptions. But overall, that decreased slightly. And then there was just a slight increase in our supplies. Our biggest expenses there is our Westlaw and Bloomberg account, which is our legal research tools. And our tax sale fund, we did have a slight increase there, also a 7.5% increase, and the biggest increase in that was due to our professional services. So that's our title reports and our auction services that we have. An important thing to note on the tax sale budget is that at the end of each tax sale, these costs are reimbursed through the court costs of the tax sale. So that pretty much concludes our budget for this year. You have any questions?
Questions for Tabitha?
I can think of.
Very straightforward. Thank you, Tabitha.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. Jennifer Sauer, Financial Administrator. I'm presenting a few budgets this morning that fall under my office's oversight. The first is the audit finance budget, and we actually achieved a completely flat budget for 2025 due to some turnover that we had in our office, a lot of turnover we had in our office this year. We have a great staff. About 97% of our budget is our salaries. So the audit finance budget is flat. The debt service budget is reduced in 2025. And then the coroner's budget is showing a increase higher than the 5% annual increase. But in 2023, we signed a 3-year contract that came out after we had already set the 24 budget. So we had to shift some money from our contingency budget into that budget to cover that cost. And then, just to go over our debt service savings, this is the a set schedule based on bonds that we have in place, bonds and certificates of participation, and this is just per our long-term debt schedule. We had some debt that fell off this year, and we have a little bit of debt falling off for the next 2 years, but it's pretty flat. The next time we see a significant amount of debt falling off will be in 2027 and 2028, which times about the same timing that I know we have some departments who have some large projects looming in the future, which they currently have in our CIP scheduled for around 2027 and 2028. And then the general expense budget is showing a few changes. We went through and we removed some unused items for hardware maintenance, facilities maintenance supplies, office supplies, telephone, just items that don't really fall in the general expenses area. We added some software maintenance for Questica, which is our new budget software, and eCivis, which is our grant management software. It is a new tool that both of those are new tools we just rolled out this spring. And the eCivis tool, our hope is that we will get departments to use that more as they learn more about it and can help find some grants to help us alleviate some of our expenses. That was an increase of about $100,000 to the general expenses budget. We also had about a 15% increase in our, or it's estimated 15% from our insurance broker for our property insurance and motor vehicle insurance again this year. So one of the other things we did is we consolidated everyone's insurance over to the general expenses budget just to get a better handle on exactly what the costs are for the county, and so that we can just kind of manage that better in one budget instead of it affecting 24. Our last expense is transfers out. There is a small increase to this, primarily because last year in working through the budget, we were able to use ARPA grants to save some of the expense in our cap outlay last year. That grant, as you guys know, is going away at the end of 2024. So I'm just kind of right-sizing the capital outlay back up. I'm only increasing it to 1.7 million, which isn't quite all the way up to the 2 million that we historically have done in cap outlay. And then I guess my last slide is just on our cap outlay requests. Even though we're only setting our budget at 1.7 million, we received almost $6 million in cap outlay requests for 2025 alone. So we had a very heavy request from all departments for the 2025 cap outlay. We will get into discussing those more in a couple weeks whenever we actually get into our CIP discussions, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot of exactly where we are. The general expenses does have one item included in this 5.8, and that is for $100,000, and that is for our small capital outlay items. So that gets done later in the year for items that are not over $50,000 in nature, and then we just pool all those together at the end of the year. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for Jennifer?
Can't wait to get to those capital outlay requests.
Can we go back to the debt service? I want to talk about that just for a moment.
Yes.
So the debt service, this is the payments that we make on our debt service.
Absolutely. This is both principal and interest.
Okay. And approximately, do you know what percent the debt service is making up of our current budget? I know in the past, we've usually been between 8 and 10%.
I don't, but I can calculate that just as soon as I get back to where I have a calculator.
Okay. All right. I think that's good for the public to know kind of what
Yep.
your county's debt load is. Are you debt heavy? Are you, where are you at?
Yeah, we really are not. We have been reducing our debt burden pretty regularly over the last few years. We had one debt increase in 2022 for the mental health addition to the jail, and also for various Parks and Rec projects. But that really didn't have much effect on, I think we just simply replaced some debt that was falling off that year.
Now, I know that your timing is always everything, and when you take out that debt, I mean, are there going to be buyers? Are there going to be, what's the market look like? And I think that, so you're estimating maybe 2028 when the county would be really probably looking if they're going to take on more debt, 2027, 2028, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, we could look at taking out debt at the tail end of 26, depending on how the market looks. Usually if we take it out in the mid-year of 26, then that debt expense doesn't come till the next year, till 27.
And finally, for debt, it's projects that are, or items that are going to last for a significant period of time.
Absolutely. Usually these are about 15-year debt that we take out.
Okay. So we wouldn't be replacing laptops, but
I would not recommend replacing computers with debt. I think we've done that once before in the past, and it's just generally not a good idea for us.
But turnpike interchanges might be an option.
so those could be.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, we dropped this probably $1 million last year, didn't we? $500,000 to $1 million?
Yeah, we've been on
It was quite a bit higher.
we've been on a down cycle on our debt for a few years.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions. Commissioners? All right, thank you.
Sure.
Next up is the Board of County Commissioners. Amanda?
Good morning, Commissioners. Amanda Monholland with the Commission Office. So this year for our budget, it is at a total of $597,442, which is a slight increase from last year, where I think 4%. However, the majority of that is from our salary and also specifically with the new subscription and software line item. Our Civic Plus Agenda software did go up slightly, so that is one increase as well. And also, I actually switched and added a line item for some subscription into what used to be membership and subscription. I added it to the software script. So that was the increase there, which is the same as it was. It's just a new line item. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
No, I don't think so.
All right, thank you,
Okay,
Amanda.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Beck, you're up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Beck, Shawnee County Clerk, looking at a budget that I will have nothing to do with next year. So nice. My last budget, I started this in, you want to hear my history, don't you?
1988?
97.
Oh, wow.
97, but Pat McDonald handed a nice budget over to me, but it was a little bit lower than this. My budget is going to be $1,048,921, which is an increase of $27,366. Only thing that's not wages in that, and thank you for myself and my employees, is $210 for phones, and that's IT's fault, not mine. And Mark said he would gladly take the blame for it, because they told me that my phone bill was gonna go up because, I don't know, did you blame the DA? I think he blamed the DA's office, but I'm not real sure. I don't wanna start a contention as I'm going out the door, but I'm just saying. 98.3% of my budget is salaries, 98.34, which is very common. But we still have, have membership fees and all of the same things everybody else has. Been nothing exceptional going on in my office as far as the budget. It's very, things are being taken care of, and it's, so I don't have anything. Jennifer, keeps her finger on the top of our, our expenditure. She won't let us spend too much.
So Cindy, just a question for you. I know that in years past, your office would have dealt with fishing licenses. Those are now gone to the state, so that your office isn't dealing with fishing licenses anymore. You still can issue peddler's licenses.
Peddlers, and it's the difference between when someone has an item in their vehicle that they're selling, like say they have a book or something, or cookware, or if they come to you and they're selling it as a subscription. So,
Okay.
yeah, transient merchant and peddlers are two different kinds.
Are there other licenses or other revenue that your department is looking at still?
Yes, we have all the cereal malt beverage licenses. We get, we take care of all that, and the, sure. The other word just left me. But anyway, for the fees that they have to pay every other year to have the cereal malt beverage. But the monies that come into my office are taken, they come in, we have about $9,000 in income. We get we get charged, or we have to pay, our people have to come in if they have a subdivision in the unincorporated areas of the county. They have to come in and pay, I think it's 10 cents a lot. So we have something, small income there. But most of it comes in the CMB area, and that's where the majority of our 9,000 comes in.
Okay. Any other questions for Cindy?
No.
All right. Thank you, Cindy.
Okay.
Commissioners, just to answer the question you guys asked earlier, last year, we were at 5.4% for our debt service, and this year, we're looking at under 5%.
Okay, very good. Elections.
And I apologize if I just crackled in people's ears. I was told, do not touch the microphone.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Howell, Election Commissioner. Just a review of our request. I know on your sheet it says that we're down 15% for our request. I guess just a reminder that even year elections are certainly more expensive than odd year elections, and I'll get into that here in just a little bit. 2025 strategic plan highlights, just a reminder of all the different types of things that we end up doing, I guess. Voter services and experiences. You know, in 23 we did a survey of actual voters. I was very happy with the results of that. We averaged 90% of voters said that they knew the 3 ways they could vote. They understood their options. They were happy with their wait times and all of those options, and that they had a good experience. So I felt very good about our public responses on that. It seems like every year there's a few new legislative requirements. We're actually doing some of those additional requirements from this year's legislative session currently, and I expect those will be somewhat of an increased cost for us going forward. Our election operations and staffing, I think we've got good people that do a good job, so I feel pretty good about that at the moment. I think you guys have done a good job of helping us get salaries to where we can retain people, so we appreciate that. Technology maintenance and replacement will be an issue in upcoming years because we're nearing the end of service life for some of our tabulation systems, so we'll talk about that here a little bit. And building security and maintenance, we've done quite a bit with the grant funds that we've had on that, so I feel pretty good about our stance on those issues as well. 25 budget overview. Remember, this is the larger of the 2-year odd year elections. So while it will be down some, it's still going to have a number of things to deal with, such as our Sherwood election, and we're going to have our drainage districts elections too, which are technically separate elections. Voter engagement is something that we're always working on. We will have a mayor's race in 24 typically, so usually those take a little more time and effort. But since that, if there is a primary, it's not election-wide, we can recover most of those costs by law. Most of our expenses actually remain fairly constant. I think we've done a good job of putting together a number of 4- and 5-year contracts with minimal increase. So I think that's part of what's helping us contain some of those costs that we might otherwise face. Just to look for a second at those election cycle expenses, typically presidentials will be the largest, and then we move into what I would call a local larger, which is what 25 is. 26 will be what we call a gubernatorial, which will be a little bit less than a presidential, and then 27 budget actually will be the smaller of the 4 by a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. We have 2 managers who are actually certified election administrators, so I feel very good about their knowledge and their skill level. We've got 1 manager that's completed all the coursework and should graduate in September. Then we have 6 additional staff actively pursuing certifications. So we're happy with the progress we're making on education in the office and making sure that we're meeting those national expectations as well as local. In the rest of our budget, we're bringing our service and supply category expenditures down again to reflect the odd year election cycle. Our travel and training categories are up slightly because typically odd years are the best years to try to get staff to some of those training events because the even years are just too busy to do a lot. We do anticipate utility rates continuing to go up. And then just a reminder, our MSA 2 and 3 budget requests are actually down from each of the previous 3 years. Our 5-year CIP, we are requesting in late '26. We're anticipating requesting funding for replacement of voting equipment. Our current equipment will be approaching vendors' end of service life expectations. This includes poll book tabulators, high-speed tabulators, electronic poll books, and ADA marking devices. Currently estimating just over $3 million for that, but it could be subject to change. That's our current estimate, but I expect some fluctuation in that by the time it actually is time to execute on that. Again, here's our total numbers, and you can see personnel, it makes up a lot of it. Additionally, our contracts with our election services, we end up with about less than 3% that we really have a lot of control over in reality. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
On your CIP request, you said it was over $3 million. When I ran the numbers on the 4 requests that you have, it came up to $2,700,000. And so just trying to, is it just you're estimating the cost will go up between now and 2026?
I think there's some of that we anticipate. I also think that on the equipment side, what we really don't know for sure is with the new federal requirements that are coming down, we're not sure how much of existing equipment will work, and we're not sure what all of those parameters will be. They've built the software in such a way that they can add requirements as they're finished. They don't actually expect all of those requirements to be finished for a while yet, so it may be late '26 before we actually know how that does or doesn't work and what it actually will end up costing, because the standards are still underway.
Okay. On the 4 requests that you have, the election express vote replacements, the election DS 200 ballot tabulator, the DS 850 high-speed ballot tabulator, and then the express poll book replacements. Of these, how many are we potentially going to be able to use, maybe if we're looking at bonding money, because again, this is 2026, and if we're looking at the end of 2026, again, trying to forecast into the future what we would budget for versus what we would bond for. Of those 4, what does the do any of them have life expectancy over 10 years?
I think that one of the things we would try to do is see if we could get the vendor, depending on how that was selected, to, if there was a little bit of life left in something, see if we could get something back from those from the vendor, if we go that route. So there's some options in there that might save a little bit of money. Again, we won't know till we get there if the new standards create an issue or not. Typically with these things, we've tried to figure out if we could just replace part of it, but with the new standards coming down, I think that's going to be a real challenge.
I guess what I was looking at is it going to have a lifespan of more than 10 years on any of those items?
Not enough to be significant. At least typically they say 10 to 12 years is their expected lifespan, and then you start getting into a lot more. I guess I'll just say it this way. I would not want to have happen what happened to us when I took over in 2012, where the equipment was 20 years old,
Right.
and fully 20% of the equipment was breaking down and jamming and creating question marks. And in this environment, I would prefer to avoid question marks and significant issues with equipment breaking down.
And I guess what I'm looking at is just, do we start budgeting for it now as opposed to looking at it being a bonded item? So it looks like it's going to have to be budgeted for. So, Commissioner Mays?
Well, so technology changes pretty quick. A 10-year-old piece of technology is typically not very good. With copy machines and office printers and things like that, it seems like leasing is typically a good option because you can upgrade the technology. I mean, just like our cell phones, right? They change and you get a new one every so often. Is that an option with election equipment? Can we lease something like this, and then as the technology changes or they break down, somebody comes and replaces them?
We've looked at that. Typically, it's not cost effective because you'll end up paying as much in 3 to 5 years as you do over the 10 years. Additionally, I think vendors are aware that it's expensive, and so we've pushed them. And in fact, on our poll book provider, they've actually gotten a guarantee from Microsoft to support it for as long as 10 years, which was one of the original problems we had with some of our original poll books. So we think our current vendor does a good job of looking at that issue and addressing it as best they can. I think it's important not to get a system with off-the-shelf type products because then you do get into more of those issues. So I'll certainly be, I think, recommending that we look at an option that doesn't have a lot of off-the-shelf, that has built-in capabilities and software, basically the ability to stand behind the equipment for 10 years and to service it. I think both of those are important components.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I see we have 170 of these machines, and is there a chance where we could consolidate some of this area where we wouldn't need as many machines? Maybe we have a couple precincts where there's not much traffic, and do you have one at each, several at each precinct, or how does that work?
So the way that we've structured it currently is we've had as many as 100 precincts, and not being sure every time you run into, for instance, I'll just give you an example. In the 2022 redistricting, I did not know how many precincts we were going to end up with, and I really am not completely in control of that. So I like to have a cushion there to make sure that we are capable, without having to add new equipment later, to have enough to handle it. We're fortunate in that we didn't see a lot of additional splits in Shawnee County. So there needs to be a cushion to handle that. There needs to be a cushion to make sure that we have enough to do testing. We need to have enough to do early voting. So between the express votes and the DS200 tabulators, we might be able to bring the tabulator count down a little bit, but I figure we'll look at that a little harder as we get right down to it. I think there's room for a little bit probably on the tabulators. Express votes, I would be nervous to get too deep into those because early voting can take quite a bit. Additionally, if we do additional voting events, we may need some additional for that too. So just, I think the flexibility is important to plan ahead for so that we don't end up having to buy additional later on. I guess to answer your question, there is a little bit of room there, yes.
Other questions?
Done.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Brings us to facilities.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nelda Henning, Director of Facilities. As for my budget, not very exciting. Overall, I am asking for a 2.52% increase. Across the board, general increase. While some line items took a larger increase, it was because we combined items to clarify and clean up the request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on the budgetary part of it?
A couple of weeks ago, I left each one of you kind of a little quick summary of all the buildings that facilities oversees, breaking it down by sections or groups, from fire safety, elevators, just general building, mechanical systems, to kind of give you a heads up of where we feel the buildings are setting right now. I hope each one of you had an opportunity to review that. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in regards to that summary, and where we stand right now and where we hope to go.
Sure. I do have questions on when we get to the capital or the CIP.
Yes.
So just going through those. Courthouse landscaping irrigation, that's for 2025, and I understand that once we get done with the construction, we're gonna need to go around and do a lot of landscaping to clean up.
Well, on the CIP requests, I had 4 that were my top requests, the landscaping being one of those. I mean, as you're aware, the grounds around the courthouse has taken quite a beating. The sidewalks portion of that damage is part of the project. So once they're done, they will be coming in and replacing and repairing the sidewalk, which will then again make more damage to the grounds around the courthouse. The irrigation system has not been working for the 3 years that I've been on site, so it needs to be totally redone. And so as part of that, we've lost a lot of landscaping too. So the request would be to upgrade the sprinkler system, irrigation sprinkler system, so it's functioning again, and then to replace or update landscaping to help screen some of the new equipment on the ground, and just general overall cleanup. Gearing more towards hiding or eliminating places where people could hide weapons, working with security and walking through that. Also, we've had a couple of issues of slips because people are stepping in the wrong place. So we'd like to kind of start working towards that. So that's what the request is meant for, is to clean up a lot of issues and landscaping.
Okay. Then you have down courthouse restroom renovations with $75,000 budgeted for each year.
We had requested that 2 years ago. You funded the first year. You did not fund last year. I would like to go back to funding that again. As we have found through the renovation, the restrooms were not touched as part of the project. But with the piping and all the work that they've been doing in the pipe chases, we're finding that a lot of the old piping is starting to fail. And we're going to have to dig into a lot of the waistlines and repair them.
Okay.
So that was the gist of the request, is to refresh and update the bathrooms, but also the piping in the wall needs to be addressed, and it's going to start getting worse.
When you
Yes.
go to do the replacement of the restrooms, are you going to be ripping into areas that we've just had
No.
repaired or replaced?
No,
Okay.
no, the restrooms are pretty much separated. They have a common chase that runs through the building, but the restrooms are on this side versus the mechanical system, which is on the other side.
Okay. Then you have down the window replacement for 707 Quincy.
That is correct.
Yeah.
These windows leak.
They
Right
leak?
now, we probably have water running in. When they washed the windows last week, we had water running in.
Is it seals that need to be replaced, or is it the windows themselves?
It's the frames. The water's leaking in through the frames, the seals and the frames.
Okay.
They just need to be replaced. It's pretty bad.
But you don't have that down until 2026. Is that something that we should be addressing sooner? I mean,
It would be nice. The other item that was one of my top 4 was the roof over at the courthouse. It is failing. We had the roofers out again last week, and it's all due to the construction, people walking around on the roof. So, I mean, I have to pick and choose. A roof is a little bit more important than windows, but the windows would definitely be something that I would push if I could, yes.
So in the meantime, I mean, we're looking at 2 years out. Can we put some caulking around them or something for the time being? I mean,
Yes,
to get us
yes. I mean,
through?
we've addressed them as we've been able to, yes.
Okay.
I believe, I believe we probably should look at changing the funding on the courthouse roof replacement, because we do have a specific
The roof project.
fund that was created
That's
to prevent CIP items for roof and parking lots.
Although that's a big
The
one.
last item that was in my top 4 was actually the HVAC system over at the JP Lewis building. Last year, we had talked about, I had spent $38,000 making repairs to that building. This year, it's about twice a month, we're over there repairing or doing something, and it's usually between $1,000 and $2,000 every time we're over there. So we're trending towards another $38,000 of repair for the HVAC system in that building. I have talked to an engineer about that. Most of the internal piping can stay. It's just the main systems that would need to be replaced. It's still very costly. That system, when it was installed, was considered state-of-the-art. Over the years, it has been determined it's not so state-of-the-art, and that we would have to go to a mini-split type of system that would be able to utilize what's there, but replace the main components. So
what is the elections office HVAC control system?
that is a request from them. The control system that runs their mechanical system right now is on an outdated computer. And so it's very difficult for them to get it up and to get it running. Plus, they don't have any setbacks. They don't show any alarms. It's very outdated, and it would be nice to get it onto a current system, similar to what we're doing at the courthouse, similar to what we've done at the annex, where it can be monitored remotely. And we could schedule setbacks and schedule peak times. There's so much more opportunity with current systems. And it's a computer-based, there'll be thermostats installed, but it's a computer-based system that usually is in the cloud and can be addressed from about anywhere.
And that's in 2026 for that. You also have in 2026 the replacement of the carpet at the elections office.
And the carpet and painting type things are just on a 10-year rotation. Typically, about every 10 years, you just plan on scheduling to do those type of replacements, just from wear and tear. I think I had, the North Annex was also listed. J.P. Lewis does have some flooring listed on, as a 2025. Their flooring is currently failing. It's breaking and splitting. We looked at repairing it. Unfortunately, it's degraded to the point where it's not repairable. Plus, the product isn't really manufactured any longer, and we can't find the color match for the sealants that are used. I had North Annex flooring on there. I have the Van Sickle building flooring on there. An item that the health department requested was an egress door out of the WIC area. The WIC area is kind of an enclosed office area. There's one door in, that's it. It backs up to the restroom or an outside wall. So if there is an incident where they feel unsafe or need to escape, there's no way out. So they're requesting to add a door to the outside from that office area. I could see for safety reasons it being needed. I would point out there's a item missing on here, or what you would perceive as missing. It's the replacement of the west courthouse doors that go out onto the current patio. I had held off on that, hoping that the northwest door would be installed so we'd have some time to see how that is working. I did speak with security about it. They are ecstatic with how the northwest door is currently operating. Since it has been installed, which it's been about 3 weeks now, they've had 2 individuals try to go at it. They've been stopped, so they do feel that it has heightened the security measures on the courthouse. And they would like to see the west door done that way, but it was not included in the CIP because at the time, that door had not been installed. So I wanted to see how it was working for them. So.
On the, you have one item for Maynard Conference Center, and that's lighting, but aren't there more needs at Maynard with audio visual?
There's a lot of
chillers?
needs, yes.
I mean, so
Lighting was from last year and I just rolled it forward.
what are all the needs at Maynard Conference Center?
Everything. I mean, it's everything. The mechanical systems are failing. The electrical systems are outdated. The AV systems are totally outdated. Then you go to the interior finishes. Last year, we spent a lot of money repairing doors, but we had, I mean, you need carpet, you need paint. Yeah, Maynard is, the roof's in decent shape, but the rest of the building needs help. It would take a capital project to totally go in and do what Maynard needs done.
And again, Maynard was not included in the Stormont Vale Event Center remodel.
No.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, the tile in the courthouse, second and fourth floor, where do we have tile?
The hallways. First floor is terrazzo. The basement is a quartz or a quarry tile, or I'm sorry, a mosaic tile, the little squares. And then second, third, and fourth are VCT or asbestos floor tile. Second and I believe fourth are asbestos. Third floor is a standard 12 by 12.
Are we replacing because they're worn out or just because they're asbestos?
Just mainly because they're asbestos.
Is
Third
it-
floor is a little worn through. The project has been very hard on the building, all the trash carts being rolled out, all the equipment being rolled out. It has beat the floors up very badly on second, third, and fourth.
Do you think these estimates would cover the abatement as well as the replacement?
Yes.
Or-
Abatement is, while it is asbestos, and I hate using that word because it gets people very upset and excited, the tiles themselves are not considered friable, or they would put off a dust. The mastic is what is considered friable, and the mastic is removed with a citrus-based chemical that breaks it down. And it's fairly quick. They get the tile up, they coat the floor with the citrus remover, and then they scrape it off, bag it, and haul it out.
The tile and the removal of the mastic can be disposed of at a normal dump site. There's no exceptions to that. So it's a fairly quick and a fairly easy process. The ones we have done in the courthouse, they've been in and out within a day. So it's not something that would cause concern to the general public or to staff.
Okay. The questions? All right. Thank you very much. IT, you're up.
Morning, Commissioners. Mark Price, Information Technology. So my budget this year has seen a $422,000 increase from last year. That's about a 10% increase. Of that, about $72,000 has come from salaries and just increases there. IT does have 24 employees, have a few vacancies, but one we're getting ready to fill and would expect to fill the other one by the end of summer. Then the big increase came from our contractual services piece. In that MSA, we saw our repairs and servicings increase $400, which was over the 3%, which was for telecom services. We have a bunch of older handsets, the phones on the desks, and are seeing where that is going to probably need to be more replacements going on throughout the next year. Then the real big one you probably care about is our actual contractual services, where we saw a $316,000 increase. That all came from different areas. One was we implemented a new backup solution last year. We also implemented a new patch management system. We had to increase our Central Square, which is our ERP maintenance. Part of that was just through regular upgrade or regular increases of cost. Then we also added for the Fusion, which supports some HR functionality. Other notable increases were we had Cloudflare, which adds security for our website and helps protect us from outside threats getting into the county. And then kind of the last piece that was a major one was some Microsoft licensing increase. They changed the way their licensing was figured, and we're going to have to add licensing to cover and stay compliant within Microsoft. Then for the final part of that MSA was our membership dues and subscriptions, where we saw a $686 increase. Before I move on, was there any questions about any of that? I know I went through it quick.
Questions?
Not yet.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. Then the final part of my budget was our supplies requests, and that saw a increase of about $15,000. The notable one there was for our tech refresh budget. I increased that 10%. We have a lot of computers that are coming up to the end of life next year. Part of that has to do with Windows 10 hitting end of life, and we have to be prepared for Windows 11. And so we're wanting to make sure we have enough computers on hand to get all those computers replaced so they'll support Windows 11. And then we're also just seeing where cost of computers has increased a little over the last few years, so we've increased that to be able to do those replacements. And then the final part there was, again, some more phone increases under miscellaneous. The support for the phone system we have, we're seeing a little bit more needs there, so I put $5,000 extra into that piece. And I guess the final part was my capital outlay, or not capital outlay, it's capital assets, sorry, Jennifer. And that's just a increase in our Nutanix nodes, which we've been purchasing. Again, just a small increase there of I think about $2,000, not really notable to this. And I did have a CIP item, which I believe Jennifer's moving to small CIP, so I'll be discussing that later.
Well, you had one item, I think.
For the 26.
Yes, yeah. The small one, the
Yeah.
25 did
Yeah,
get moved, yeah.
the 26 isn't till 26, and it's our regular network switch replacements.
Questions for Mark?
Yeah, Mark, several years ago, we switched to the phone system and saved a lot of money at the time by going to kind of an open source software. Are there other opportunities where there are now open source software available that we could look at doing things on a larger scale to save some money? I mean, I know you're talking about Windows, and I know that there are other options. I know that Windows is the one that everybody knows, but I mean, it's pretty expensive. Everything seems to be getting more and more expensive. Is there?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, and if you look, we're seeing things like New World is pushing towards going in the cloud, which when we're gonna have to do that at some point. That's something you won't see through my budget. It'll actually go through the sheriff DOC budget. They're the ones who pay for those upgrades. But they're actually pushing everyone to there. They expect by 2030 to have, I think it's their goal to have 100% of people in the cloud, so that will cause an increase there. You're seeing even Central Square, our ERP system, is pushing towards that. But the problem we run into with like moving away from a Windows is those systems actually have requirements that require Microsoft, require Windows. I know for a fact New World would not work on a non-Windows PC. It requires Windows, and it actually requires Word and Outlook to function. We can definitely go through and look and see where we might be able to do savings. The piece we run into with the ever-changing security landscape is these paid ones where the software you're paying for tends to be upgraded and more up to date for manageability on our scale. One thing we're looking at, and it's not going to be a huge savings, is we have a internet filter piece that sits outside our firewall to look for threats. I'm actually have a meeting scheduled with the company because I think we can actually keep the price the same, but actually increase what our services are and what they actually are protecting us from. That's kind of what I'm seeing is you're not always saving money, but you're being able to find things that would actually provide more protection and security for the same dollars we're spending on other things.
Okay, and that's actually kind of leads me to another question where, you know, we deal with a lot of different vendors, especially in your department, it feels like. And I know just this year we added the new budgeting software, we added the grant software, they came from the same vendor. Are there areas where we could maybe consolidate vendors and save some money? I know that some of these companies do a million different things. Some of them obviously do just one thing. You know, is there opportunity there as well?
There is, and we've taken advantage of that. 3 years ago, we entered into the Infinity program for Checkpoint, which is our firewall. We just had the firewall through them. When we did the Infinity program, that first off, the big piece why we chose to do that is we got a hardware upgrade that was then spread out over 3 years rather than us all paying for it up front. Also with the Infinity program, it consolidated our firewall management, antivirus on the computers, and email security all into one vendor, where before that was 3 different vendors we had. So we do always look for those. That's one I can think of off the top of my head. I know we've been doing some evaluation on a couple other vendors that have semi-overlapping products and are trying to make sure we evaluate, and before we make a change like that, we're gonna get the best quality product before we do a jump. It does get a little cumbersome because you've got, 4 or 5 different vendors you're going through to try and get one thing done. There are some companies that will, to spend more money, you can actually help consolidate this all down to give yourself a better single pane of glass and make it simpler for the users. That's the one thing we look at most is what's the impact on the users, and how can we make it simpler and easier for them when they're trying to do their job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, questions? All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Our final for this first group is the treasurer, Larry Ma.
Good morning, Commissioners. Larry Moss, Shawnee County Treasurer. Last but not least, I'm proposing a flat budget this year, $726,052. Having said that, I am making 3 modifications to the 25 budget relative to the 24. Earlier this year, we reclassified a manager in the treasurer's office. That will result in an $11,000 increase in wages and benefits in 25. We also received notification that Loomis is going to increase our contract by $150 a month, so I increased the contract services by $2,000. The third item is I'm going to eliminate an intermittent position, and that will save almost $14,000. So that $14,000 will more than cover the Loomis and the reclassification. So completely flat budget with the exception of wage increases. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for the treasurer?
No.
No? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that then concludes the first group. Our 9:56 now. We're going to take a brief break and recess until 10:30 for group 2.